The alien queen and her soldiers watched me fight barehanded and fell silent. The red sky stretched endlessly above the jagged plains, a constant reminder that this world was not built for humans. Rocks jutted out like broken teeth, and strange, luminous plants glowed faintly, swaying in the thin wind. The human explorer, Kale, wiped sweat from his brow as he stood over the smoking wreckage of his ship. The crash had been brutal, tearing apart the landing module and scattering debris across the barren landscape. He had survived, but only just. Kale's eyes scanned the horizon. Movement. Shadows shifted unnaturally, creeping closer through the red dust. He froze, feeling a tingle of instinct in his spine. He had been trained for dangerous missions, but something about these shapes made even a seasoned explorer pause. The first alien came into view. Towering and armored, its body covered in dark, reflective plates that seemed to absorb the dim sunlight. Its eyes glowed a cold, piercing blue, and behind it dozens more emerged, stepping silently over the rocks. Kale counted quickly, 20, 30, maybe more. Leading them was a larger figure, taller and more imposing than the rest, adorned in intricate armor that shimmered with unknown energy. This had to be their leader, the alien queen. Kale's heart pounded, but he forced himself to stand tall. He knew retreat was impossible. The ship was destroyed and the terrain offered little cover. The only choice was to face them. The aliens stopped a few meters away, surrounding him in a wide semicircle. Kale could feel their attention like heat on his skin, analyzing, measuring, judging. Then the queen stepped forward, her movements graceful yet commanding. Every soldier behind her froze, watching her and by extension, Kale. Kale took a deep breath and lowered his hands, showing he was unarmed. But the humans had a gift the aliens did not understand: improvisation. He had survived worse odds before, relying on quick thinking, instincts, and sheer endurance. The first soldier lunged. Faster than Kale expected, it struck with a sharp, clawed arm aimed for his chest. Kale twisted at the last second, letting the creature's momentum carry it forward. He grabbed a jagged rock and slashed at its armor, scratching the surface but causing it to stumble. A ripple of surprise ran through the alien ranks. Humans were not supposed to fight barehanded like this, not against fully armored soldiers. Kale ducked under the next attack, rolling across the uneven ground. He used the slope of a small ridge to launch himself up, kicking another soldier squarely in the chest. The alien flew backward, crashing into a pile of rocks. He could hear the queen's soft, melodic voice, almost a whisper, but carrying over the clearing. She was speaking, perhaps commanding, but her soldiers hesitated. Something in Kale's movements confused them. Every instinct in Kale screamed to keep moving, to exploit what little terrain advantage he had. He darted to the side, avoiding a swing aimed at his head, and grabbed a broken piece of his ship's hull. Not a weapon, exactly, but heavy enough to block blows and redirect attacks. The aliens were strong, but they were trained in predictable patterns. Kale was unpredictable. For a moment he felt exhilaration. This was what humans were best at, turning disadvantages into opportunities. He did not have advanced weapons or energy shields, but he had adaptability, intelligence, and a relentless will to survive. He ducked a swipe and rolled, coming up behind another alien soldier. Using its momentum, he shoved it into a rock formation. The creature roared in frustration, an unfamiliar sound in the human ear, but one that Kale recognized as fear. The queen observed silently. Her soldiers were faltering, not in skill but in comprehension. They had never faced a being that fought without tools yet displayed such precision. Her gaze narrowed, but she did not intervene. The humans, she realized, were something entirely different. Something dangerous in ways her empire had never encountered. Kale's movements were fluid, almost like a dance. He ducked, rolled, and countered in instinctual rhythm, always aware of every soldier's positioning. The red dust swirled around him as the sun's faint light reflected off the alien armor, casting shifting shadows. Each clash of bodies or strike against rock echoed across the plains. The soldiers started to retreat slightly, unsure of their approach. Kale noticed. He took advantage, using a combination of feints and quick strikes to create confusion. One soldier swung wildly at him. Kale sidestepped, guiding it toward another. They collided, giving him a moment to catch his breath. The queen stepped closer. Her presence was like a gravitational pull, commanding and observing. Kale met her gaze without fear. He could feel her intelligence probing him, analyzing every muscle, every move, every calculation. She expected fear, submission, perhaps even surrender. She would get none of those. A third soldier lunged from behind a boulder, faster than the others. Kale twisted and grabbed a shard of the wrecked ship's hull, swinging it like a club. The alien staggered back, its eyes widening in surprise. Around him, the soldiers hesitated, exchanging glances. Their coordination, honed over countless battles, was faltering. Humans were not supposed to fight like this, not without weapons, not without fear. Kale's heart raced, but he stayed calm. Training and instinct guided every movement. He kicked another soldier away and ducked under a swipe from a fourth. He knew he could not keep this up forever. Energy would fade, muscles would tire, but he had already achieved something no alien had likely ever seen: hesitation. The queen's expression shifted. She had expected a human to be clever, perhaps resilient, but not this. The way Kale used the terrain, how he anticipated attacks, how he remained unarmed yet deadly. She had never seen such adaptability. She signaled her soldiers to stop advancing. A low hum of energy vibrated across the ground as if the planet itself was reacting to her command. Kale stood, chest heaving, and wiped blood from a cut on his arm. The queen's soldiers froze in place, their movements still locked by her silent command. Kale could feel their attention, their curiosity, their confusion. They were watching him the way predators might watch something unfamiliar, something that defied expectation. The queen moved slowly toward him, each step deliberate. Her eyes glimmered with intelligence, her posture a perfect balance of authority and grace. Kale held his ground, aware that this moment was crucial. She could crush him, allow her soldiers to strike, or something else entirely. He took a deep breath and raised his hands, not as a sign of surrender but as a challenge. He did not know her motives, but he knew one thing: humans survived against impossible odds. They adapted, they endured, and they turned weakness into strength. The queen stopped mere meters away, tilting her head slightly. For a long moment, silence reigned. The alien soldiers watched, motionless, their weapons lowered but ready. Kale could feel the weight of their gaze, but he did not flinch. He did not need to. In that silence, a realization passed between them. The queen understood something fundamental. Humans were not just another species to conquer. They were unpredictable, resilient, and capable of feats no alien could have imagined. Kale's bare hands, his instinct, and his courage had earned a measure of respect from an entire alien army. He lowered his stance slightly, not as a gesture of fear, but of readiness. Whatever came next, Kale knew he had already achieved something extraordinary. He had survived the first encounter, and in doing so, had earned the attention of the most powerful being on this alien world. The wind carried the faint hum of alien energy across the plains. The sun dipped lower, casting the world in deep red and orange hues. Kale's mind raced, preparing for what would come next. He did not yet know if this encounter would end in battle, alliance, or something even stranger. But he knew one truth, as clear as the blood and dust around him: humans were not so easily defeated. And the alien queen had just learned that fact. Kale's chest heaved, his muscles screaming with every movement, but he could not rest. The alien soldiers had stopped advancing, but the air was thick with tension. Their glowing blue eyes followed him like hunting predators. And above them, the alien queen observed with an intensity that made the air itself feel heavy. Kale knew that this was more than a test of strength, it was a test of will. Suddenly, the queen made a soft gesture, almost imperceptible, and the soldiers lunged again. Faster this time. Kale had no weapon, no armor, but he had reflexes honed through years of training, and he had the one thing the aliens could not predict: human ingenuity. The first alien soldier swung a massive arm at him. Kale ducked, rolling under the strike, letting the momentum carry the creature forward. He sprang up and grabbed a jagged piece of ship debris, using it as a makeshift club. He swung, not to kill, but to knock it off balance. The soldier stumbled, crashing into a rock and letting out a frustrated roar. Another soldier charged from the side, claws extended. Kale sidestepped and grabbed a loose stone, hurling it with precise force. It struck the alien's armor, not enough to hurt, but enough to distract. The human was using everything: the environment, gravity, and sheer unpredictability to survive. The alien soldiers were trained for coordination, for disciplined attacks, but Kale's movements were chaotic, fluid, and intelligent. He ducked under a swipe, kicked a soldier into another, and used the momentum to vault over a fallen creature. Each motion was calculated yet unpredictable. The soldiers hesitated, unsure of how to counter this strange, unarmed human who moved like a predator and a strategist combined. Kale's mind raced as fast as his body. He noticed patterns, small tells in the alien attacks. One soldier always struck with its left claw first. Another's armor had a weak seam near the shoulder. He was learning their fighting style faster than they could adapt to his. The queen stepped forward, her armor glinting under the dim light. She had never seen a human fight like this, without weapons, without fear, yet with lethal precision. Her soldiers, highly trained and formidable, were beginning to falter under the weight of Kale's relentless, barehanded assault. Kale spotted an alien attempting to flank him from behind. Without turning fully, he twisted and used his shoulder to bump a nearby boulder, sending it rolling directly into the flanker. The alien fell with a shriek, scrambling to get up. Kale didn't wait. He used the moment to strike a series of quick, targeted blows against another approaching soldier, forcing it back. Sweat dripped into Kale's eyes, stinging them, but he ignored the pain. His focus was absolute. Every step, every motion, every decision mattered. This fight was more than survival, it was a statement. Humans were resilient, clever, and unpredictable. No amount of alien training could fully anticipate that. The soldiers regrouped, but their hesitation was palpable. They had encountered strength before, weapons before, even cunning before, but never raw, adaptive human skill. Kale could feel their confusion, see it in the way they paused before striking, in the tiny delays that allowed him to counter. He ducked under a swing, rolled, and came up behind a soldier. Using its momentum, he shoved it toward another, sending both staggering. Then he vaulted to higher ground, perching briefly on a jagged rock formation to gain perspective. From this vantage point, he could see the queen moving among her soldiers, observing, calculating, silently adjusting her strategy. Kale's mind raced. He couldn't just survive, he had to make this count. Every strike, every movement, every tactic was a message. Humans could not be underestimated. He leapt down, landing in a crouch and immediately spinning to deflect an incoming claw strike. The alien was strong, but Kale was faster. He grabbed its arm, twisted, and redirected its energy into the ground, making it crash heavily. The other soldiers hesitated, watching Kale's movements like they had never watched anything before. He was a blur of motion, seemingly everywhere at once, using every advantage the terrain offered. One soldier lunged, but Kale pivoted, striking its legs with a swift kick, sending it sprawling. Another came from above. He grabbed a fallen piece of ship metal and swung it, forcing the alien to block and stumble. The queen's presence was felt everywhere, commanding without words. She could end this instantly, yet she did not. She was studying him, and Kale knew it. He could almost feel her respect growing with every successful maneuver, every narrow escape, every counterattack that demonstrated human ingenuity. Kale's energy surged. He began to anticipate the soldiers' reactions almost before they happened. A feint here, a roll there, a shove into a rock or a fellow soldier. They were powerful, but they were not adaptable in the same way he was. The queen herself leaned forward slightly, intrigued by this display. He was proving something fundamental. Humans could survive and even thrive against impossible odds, using nothing but their mind, body, and will. For a brief moment, a soldier managed a direct hit, striking Kale's shoulder with a powerful blow. He grunted but rolled with it, absorbing the force, and came up behind the alien to shove it into another. The chain reaction sent 3 soldiers crashing into each other. Kale didn't pause. He vaulted over a boulder, landing in a crouch, eyes locked on the queen. She had not moved, only watched, analyzing, calculating. The soldiers hesitated again, a rare pause in their otherwise synchronized assault. Kale used it to his advantage, sprinting toward a cluster of them, ducking under claws, and spinning to trip another with a well-placed kick. One soldier lunged at him from the side, but Kale grabbed a loose rock and struck it with precision, causing it to stagger. Around him, the battle had become almost surreal. The Queen's army, trained for war, had never encountered such chaos from a single human. The creatures were powerful, but they were unprepared for unpredictability, for a mind that adapted and a body that moved with precision and instinct combined. Kale's chest heaved, his limbs screaming, but his focus never wavered. He circled the soldiers, exploiting every flaw, every hesitation, every tell. They had power, yes, but he had intelligence, ingenuity, and an indomitable will. He could feel their confusion, hear it in their frustrated roars, see it in their uncertain movements. Finally, the soldiers paused, looking to the queen. Their advance halted completely. Kale stood, battered and bloodied, chest heaving but triumphant in spirit. The queen stepped forward closer than ever, her eyes locked onto his. For a long moment, silence reigned. Not a single soldier moved. The red plains were still, the only sound the soft wind and Kale's steady breathing. The queen tilted her head, studying him. She had never seen a human fight like this, without weapons, without armor, and without fear. She could sense his strength, yes, but more importantly, she sensed his mind. Humans were different, unpredictable, resilient, dangerous in ways that weapons could not measure. Kale met her gaze steadily. He knew he had survived the assault not through brute strength alone, but through cunning, adaptability, and sheer determination. Every dodge, every counter, every strike had been a message. Humans could not be controlled or easily defeated. The queen stepped back slightly, signaling her soldiers to hold their ground. They froze, still watching, still silent. Kale's heart raced, not from fear but from exhilaration. He had faced an alien army barehanded, and he had survived. More than that, he had earned the attention, and perhaps respect, of the most powerful being on this planet. The wind carried the faint hum of alien energy across the plains, mingling with the scent of dust and blood. Kale adjusted his stance, muscles trembling but ready. The battle had paused, but the encounter was far from over. Whatever came next, he knew one truth clearly and completely. Humans were not so easily defeated, and the alien queen had just learned that fact. The battlefield had fallen silent. Red dust hung in the air, swirling gently around Kale as he surveyed the alien soldiers. They stood frozen, weapons lowered, as if the very idea of striking him had been paused by an unseen force. Above them, the alien queen stood tall, her armor gleaming faintly in the dim light, her glowing eyes fixed on him. Kale's chest heaved, sweat stinging his eyes, but he lowered his arms slightly, taking a moment to read the situation. The queen did not speak. Her soldiers, highly trained and normally unflinching, did not move. It was as if the air itself had been commanded to stillness. Kale realized that this was a test, not just of strength but of understanding. The queen wanted more than a fight, she wanted insight. Kale wiped blood from a cut on his cheek and crouched slightly, scanning the terrain. His eyes moved from soldier to soldier, noting their positioning, their tension, the subtle twitch of a limb that betrayed indecision. This was more than combat. This was psychological. The aliens were strong, but humans had a gift the queen and her soldiers had never truly encountered: the ability to think, adapt, and anticipate in ways that defied brute force. He noticed small details: the way one soldier's gaze flicked to the queen as if seeking guidance, the subtle hesitation of another whose armor had been slightly damaged in the previous skirmish. Kale understood that the aliens were trying to process him, trying to categorize him as a threat or an anomaly. Humans were unpredictable, and their unpredictability was terrifying to beings who relied on logic and protocol. Kale took a slow, deliberate step forward. The queen's gaze followed him. She tilted her head, her expression unreadable, but the intensity of her stare conveyed something unmistakable: curiosity. The soldiers remained motionless, frozen under her silent command. Kale's heartbeat slowed as he realized what was happening. He had earned a moment of observation, a pause in the chaos that allowed him to showcase more than just physical skill. He moved cautiously, careful not to provoke the soldiers unnecessarily, yet confidently enough to signal that he was not intimidated. Every step he took, every gesture, was deliberate. He wanted to demonstrate something fundamental: humans survived not only through strength but through intelligence and adaptability. Kale crouched beside a rock formation and examined it. Its jagged edges and loose stones could be used strategically, if needed. He began shifting debris, positioning rocks in ways that could create obstacles or diversions. It was a simple act, but the queen noticed. Her glowing eyes narrowed slightly, and the soldiers remained still, watching her as she absorbed every motion. Kale could feel their attention like heat on his skin. He spotted a small alien device, half buried in the dust, a control panel of some kind, flickering faintly with energy. Kale approached it carefully, understanding that tampering with it could be dangerous. Yet he moved with confidence, improvising. Using a piece of broken metal, he manipulated the device, setting it into a stable state rather than destroying it. The flickering stabilized, and the panel hummed quietly. It was a subtle victory, but it sent a clear signal: humans could adapt, manipulate, and understand technology without formal training. The soldiers murmured among themselves, though their sounds were low, almost reverent. Kale could not understand their language, but the tones conveyed uncertainty. They had trained to dominate, to overpower, yet here stood a single human who had survived their assault and now manipulated their tools with precision. The queen stepped closer, her presence commanding attention. She extended a hand, not in attack but in observation. Kale met her gaze steadily. He did not flinch, did not bow, did not retreat. Humans had a way of showing confidence, of holding their ground even when the odds seemed impossible. She was assessing him, learning from him, and perhaps reconsidering everything she thought she knew about humans. Kale used this moment to his advantage. He took a slow breath, then performed a sequence of movements. He leapt onto a higher rock, crouched, and surveyed the entire field. He positioned himself strategically, signaling through posture, timing, and placement that he was not just surviving, he was analyzing. Humans could adapt to any environment, use terrain to their advantage, and turn even desperate situations into opportunities. The queen observed in silence, her head tilting slightly. Her soldiers mirrored her stillness, frozen by the silent command of their leader. Kale knew that the power of the human mind was being tested as much as the power of the human body. He had survived physically. Now he had to demonstrate mental strength, ingenuity, and clarity under pressure. He noticed a small fissure in the ground, unstable but potentially useful. Using it as leverage, he carefully repositioned several rocks, creating a natural barrier between himself and a group of soldiers. It was subtle, not aggressive, but effective. The soldiers' hesitation increased. Kale had created obstacles without striking a single blow, without aggression, purely through observation and application of logic and ingenuity. The queen took a slow step forward. Kale's eyes met hers. There was no malice in her gaze, only curiosity, calculation, and a growing respect. She had seen countless species, countless warriors, yet the human before her was unlike any she had encountered. Unarmed, adaptable, clever, and fearless, qualities she knew were rare and dangerous in the wrong hands. Kale understood that the queen's pause was not a mercy, it was recognition. The human's resilience and ingenuity were being acknowledged, even studied. Every movement, every adjustment, every strategic placement of rocks and debris conveyed a message. Humans could endure, adapt, and overcome in ways that were unpredictable and often disarming to other species. The soldiers whispered among themselves again, their voices tinged with uncertainty. Kale could sense the shift. The queen was teaching them a new understanding, not through words but through observation. Humans were not creatures to be dominated through brute force. They were adaptive, clever, and resilient. Kale's muscles ached, his body screamed, but he remained poised. He took a few deliberate steps forward, closing the distance to the queen without aggression. She did not move to block him, but her eyes followed every motion, absorbing every detail. Kale could feel the weight of her attention, and he realized that this was as much a psychological battle as a physical one. He crouched slightly, observing the queen and her soldiers. He noticed subtle shifts, the way they adjusted their posture, how their eyes flicked toward him and then to one another. Communication without words, a silent acknowledgement of something unfamiliar, respect, curiosity, and perhaps fear. Humans were proving that survival was not only about strength or weapons, but about adaptability, creativity, and composure under pressure. Kale's mind raced. He could anticipate the soldiers' next moves, predict their hesitation, and leverage their uncertainty. The queen's presence amplified this. Her soldiers were conditioned to follow her commands without question, yet even they paused under the weight of her scrutiny combined with the unpredictability of a human. He moved to a small ledge, surveying the alien formation. He picked up a few loose stones and dropped them carefully, testing the ground and observing reactions. Each subtle sound drew attention, each small action communicated capability. The queen's gaze followed, her glowing eyes analyzing every motion. Kale realized that humans had a unique power, the ability to demonstrate strength and intelligence without threat, to communicate capability and resilience through action alone. For a long moment, silence held the battlefield. The queen stepped forward slightly, signaling her soldiers to maintain their positions. Kale remained poised, alert, and ready. He had survived the initial assault, demonstrated his physical ability, and now showcased his mental strength. He had adapted to an alien battlefield and turned hesitation and uncertainty into an advantage. The queen's voice finally broke the silence, soft but clear, resonating across the plains. It was not a command, not a threat, only an observation. Kale could not understand the words, but the meaning was clear. He had captured her attention, challenged her assumptions, and earned a measure of respect. Kale lowered his arms slightly, acknowledging the pause without showing fear. Humans had survived against impossible odds before, and they would survive again. This was not surrender, it was readiness. He had proven that humans were clever, adaptive, and resilient. The queen and her soldiers had witnessed something new, something that no amount of training could have prepared them for. A human thriving against overwhelming odds through intelligence, agility, and willpower. The red sky stretched endlessly above them, and the wind carried the faint hum of alien energy. Kale's muscles ached, his chest heaved, but his mind was sharp. He understood the importance of this moment. He had survived, demonstrated human ingenuity, and earned the silent observation of an entire alien army. The Queen's gaze lingered on him, her soldiers still motionless. Kale knew that the encounter was far from over. The battle had paused, but the war of understanding, the psychological exchange, the test of human capability was ongoing. And through it all, one truth remained undeniable. Humans were not easily defeated, and their resilience and adaptability were qualities that even the most powerful alien forces could not ignore. As he stood, muscles trembling but ready, Kale realized something profound. This was more than survival. This was a statement. Humans could endure, adapt, and conquer challenges that seemed insurmountable. The alien queen and her soldiers had witnessed it firsthand, and the silence of the battlefield spoke volumes. Humans were different. Humans were dangerous, and Kale had proven it without raising a weapon, without surrender, and without fear. The Red Plains were quiet now, almost eerily so. Dust swirled gently in the thin wind, carrying the faint hum of alien energy from the Queen and her soldiers. Kale's muscles ached, his chest heaved, and every movement was a test of endurance. Yet he stood tall, surveying the field with sharp eyes. The alien queen had not moved since the pause, and her soldiers remained frozen under her silent command. Kale understood that this was the final moment of reckoning. The queen was assessing more than his strength. She was judging his intelligence, his composure, and his spirit. Every motion, every decision, every breath mattered. Humans had survived impossible odds before, but now it was time to prove more than survival. It was time to demonstrate what humanity could truly accomplish. He took a deliberate step forward. The soldiers flinched slightly but remained still. The Queen's gaze followed, unblinking, her glowing eyes reflecting curiosity and something else, respect. Kale scanned the field and spotted a problem. A piece of alien machinery, unstable and humming with unpredictable energy, lay near the soldiers. One wrong move and it could cause an explosion, endangering everyone nearby. Kale did not hesitate. He moved toward the device, analyzing it carefully. He had no formal training in alien technology, yet instinct and logic guided him. Using his understanding of mechanics and physics, he assessed how to stabilize it. Carefully, he placed his hands on the energy conduit, feeling its vibrations, and slowly shifted components to balance the system. Sparks flew, and the machine trembled, but it stabilized. The Queen watched intently, her soldiers frozen in awe. Kale had not only survived their assault, but had now acted to prevent disaster. This was more than a show of strength. It was a demonstration of human intelligence, creativity, and problem-solving under pressure. The soldiers began to murmur, low and cautious, a sound of uncertainty and admiration. Kale straightened, wiping sweat and dust from his brow. He took a slow, deep breath and met the Queen's gaze. He understood that words were unnecessary. Humans communicated not only through speech but through action. He had adapted, survived, and now contributed to the safety of those who had come to attack him. That in itself was a statement. Humans were capable of understanding, strategy, and respect, even under duress. The Queen's expression softened slightly, her eyes narrowing in what Kale interpreted as contemplation. She stepped closer, her armored frame moving with deliberate grace. The soldiers behind her remained motionless, their trust in her judgment absolute, yet tinged with newfound uncertainty. Kale could sense their thoughts, their amazement, their slowly growing respect. Humans were not supposed to act like this. They were supposed to be weaker, predictable, and limited. Kale moved slowly, deliberately, to a higher vantage point. From this position, he could see the full scope of the alien formation, the Queen, and the unstable device he had just stabilized. His eyes scanned every angle, noting weaknesses, opportunities, and paths for escape if needed. Yet there was no desire to flee. This was a challenge, a demonstration, and a conversation through action. The Queen finally spoke. Her voice was low, melodic, and carried across the plains, though Kale could not understand the words. Still, the meaning was clear. She acknowledged his capability, his intelligence, and his resilience. Her tone suggested recognition, a rare gift she did not often bestow. The soldiers, sensing their leader's acknowledgement, shifted slightly, their posture relaxing but still wary. Kale's pulse quickened, but he maintained composure. This was the moment humans had trained for, not to conquer but to survive, to demonstrate worth and ingenuity. Every step he had taken, every action, every strategy had led to this, a recognition that humans were more than what others expected. He moved closer to the Queen, carefully and deliberately. She did not raise a hand, did not signal her soldiers to attack. Instead, she observed, allowing him the space to approach. Kale could feel the weight of her scrutiny, and yet he did not falter. Humans had a strength that transcended the physical. They had courage, intellect, and an unyielding spirit. He allowed these qualities to guide his actions. Kale crouched briefly, acknowledging the Queen without submission, then stood again. He gestured subtly toward the device he had stabilized, indicating that he had understood the threat and acted wisely. The Queen's gaze lingered on him, and he sensed that she comprehended the message. Humans were not just fighters, they were thinkers, problem solvers, and capable of moral judgment even in alien environments. The soldiers, now fully attentive, watched every motion. They had been trained to follow orders without question, but now they faced a new lesson: respect for the unpredictable, adaptable human. Kale's actions had turned hesitation into admiration. Even without weapons, without armor, he had proven his worth through ingenuity and courage. The Queen extended a hand, not an attack, but as a gesture of acknowledgement. Kale stepped forward carefully, meeting her motion with calm confidence. He understood that this was more than a physical challenge. It was a symbolic exchange. By stabilizing the device, by surviving their assault, he had demonstrated the essence of human capability. Kale spoke, though in his own language, his voice calm and steady. "I do not wish to fight unnecessarily. I only wish to survive and understand." His words carried sincerity and clarity, qualities that transcended language. The Queen tilted her head, as if analyzing not just the words but the intent behind them. A moment of tension lingered, then the Queen signaled her soldiers to lower their weapons completely. The hum of alien energy softened, and the air seemed lighter. The silent acknowledgement had been given. Kale had earned the respect of an entire alien army and, more importantly, of their leader. Kale stepped back slightly, keeping his distance but maintaining his stance. The Queen observed him for a long moment, her eyes reflecting intelligence and calculation. He could feel her admiration growing, tempered with caution. Humans were not easily understood, and yet, through action, clarity, and courage, he had conveyed a truth impossible to ignore. Humans were formidable in mind and spirit, not just body. The soldiers began to shift, relaxing their posture and murmuring in low tones. Kale sensed their respect, cautious but genuine. He had demonstrated that humans could survive, adapt, and even assist in ways that defied expectation. The battlefield was no longer a place of combat. It had become a stage for understanding and acknowledgement. Kale surveyed the Queen and her soldiers, noting subtle changes in their demeanor. The tension was easing, replaced by curiosity and cautious admiration. He had turned fear into recognition, aggression into acknowledgement, and chaos into clarity. Every move, every decision, every gesture had communicated one truth: humans were resilient, adaptive, and capable of greatness beyond brute force. The Queen took a final step forward, her glowing eyes locking onto Kale. She lowered her hand slightly, a gesture that spoke volumes. The human had survived, demonstrated intelligence, and earned a measure of respect previously unseen in her experience. Kale met her gaze, understanding the silent message. They were equals in that moment, not through power alone, but through ingenuity, courage, and understanding. Kale's muscles trembled, exhaustion weighing heavily, but his spirit remained strong. He had faced an alien army, fought barehanded, and emerged not only alive but recognized. Humans had proven, once again, that survival depended on intelligence, adaptability, and courage as much as strength. The Queen stepped back, signaling her soldiers to hold their positions. She raised a hand, and the field around them seemed to quiet further, as if the planet itself acknowledged the human's feat. Kale knew that this encounter would be remembered, not just by her, but by every soldier present. Humans were capable of overcoming the impossible, and now, even an alien empire had witnessed it firsthand. Kale straightened, taking a deep breath. The battle was over, not with violence but with respect. He had survived, demonstrated his capability, and earned acknowledgement. The Queen, for the first time, allowed a subtle gesture of approval, a rare gift she had not given lightly. Kale glanced around, taking in the silent soldiers and the red plains. This planet was hostile, alien, and dangerous, yet he had faced it and triumphed without weapons, without surrender, and without fear. Humanity's adaptability, intelligence, and resilience had turned a near-impossible battle into a victory of spirit. The Queen finally spoke, her voice low and clear, though Kale did not understand the words. The tone conveyed meaning, acknowledgement, respect, and a warning. Humans were unpredictable, humans were formidable, and Kale had proven that the species could not be underestimated. As the red sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the jagged plains, Kale felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. The alien soldiers watched him still, but with a new understanding, a recognition that humans were capable of extraordinary feats. The Queen turned, signaling her army to regroup. Kale knew this was not the end of their encounters, but it was a beginning, a recognition that humans could survive, adapt, and inspire respect even in the most alien of worlds. Kale straightened, muscles trembling but spirit unbroken, and watched the Queen depart with her soldiers. The silence lingered, heavy with understanding and acknowledgement. Humans had survived. Humans had triumphed. And on that red plain, amidst the alien gaze and the quiet hum of energy, one truth shone clear and unyielding. Humanity was something to be reckoned with, and Kale had shown them why. He turned back toward the wreckage of his ship, a faint smile on his face. The battle was over, but the story of human ingenuity, courage, and resilience had only just begun.